Hello there everyone, welcome to Cryptocorps. I am your storyteller and I am here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Eleanor Hartwell. I'm 38 years old, and 3 months ago, I buried my husband after the Blackstone mine collapse. Everyone said it wasn't my fault, but they didn't know about our fight that morning. They didn't know how John took the dangerous night shift just to avoid coming home to me. If I hadn't pushed him so hard about moving away from this dying town, he might still be alive. I couldn't stand the pitying looks anymore. Couldn't bear walking past the mine entrance on my way to the grocery store. So I did what any reasonable widow would do. I sold everything we owned, emptied our savings account, and bought a homestead site unseen in the most remote part of the Appalachian Mountains I could find. The real estate agent seemed almost too eager to sell. 300 acres, a two-story farmhouse, and a barn, all for less than what our tiny house in the mining town was worth. When I asked why it was so cheap, he mumbled something about the previous owners leaving suddenly in '43. I didn't care about the history. I just needed somewhere far away from everyone who knew me as poor Eleanor, the mine widow. The drive up took nearly 2 days. The roads got narrower and rougher until they were barely more than dirt paths. When I finally reached the rusted gate with Hartwell freshly painted on the mailbox, I felt a strange mix of relief and unease. The forest here was different, darker, older somehow. The trees grew so close together that they blocked out most of the sunlight. Even though it was only midday, I had no idea I was driving straight into a nightmare. No idea that something had been waiting for me to arrive. Something that had claimed this valley long before the first European settlers ever set foot here. Something that considered humans to be trespassers, to be eliminated. If I had known what waited for me behind that gate, I would have turned around and never looked back. The first strange thing I noticed was how the house looked like someone still lived there. When I pushed open the front door, I found a home frozen in time. Dishes sat on the kitchen table, half-eaten meals hardened and grey with age. Coats hung by the door. A child's toy truck lay on its side in the living room. "Hello," I called out, but the only answer was the creak of floorboards under my feet. I spent that first day cleaning and trying not to think about why a family would leave everything behind. By nightfall, I was exhausted but feeling better about my decision. The house was solid, the land was beautiful, and the silence was exactly what I needed. That night, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside. Not the light steps of a deer, or even the heavier tread of a bear. These were slow, deliberate footsteps that shook the glasses in my kitchen cabinet. They circled the house, pausing at each window, each door, as if testing for a way in. I lay frozen in bed, barely breathing, until the footsteps faded with the rising sun. The next morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream, until I saw the handprints on my bedroom window. Massive prints, with fingers twice as long as mine, pressed into the glass as if something had been watching me sleep. In the garden, I found footprints nearly 18 inches long pressed deep into the soil. Stranger still, my messy vegetable rows had been perfectly straightened. A week after I moved in, an old man in a mail truck stopped at my gate, but refused to come up the drive. "I'm your mail carrier," he said, handing me a bundle of letters. His hands shook. "I'll leave your mail here at the box from now on, but it's a half-mile walk for me," I protested. He looked past me toward the house, his eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't stay here, ma'am. The mountain walker doesn't like new people." Before I could ask what he meant, he was gone in a cloud of dust. That afternoon, I found the courage to explore the basement. Boxes of children's toys and clothes sat in corners, covered in dust. On one wall, crayon drawings showed a house, my house, with a tall, hairy figure standing at the edge of the trees, watching. The child had drawn it over and over, each picture showing the figure closer to the house. At sunset, my battery-powered radio suddenly turned on by itself. Through bursts of static, I heard what sounded like heavy breathing. I switched it off, but it came back on seconds later. The breathing continued for an hour before the radio went silent. One day, walking my property line, I found something that made my skin crawl. Every tree along the boundary had been stripped of bark in a perfect circle around my land, like something had marked its territory. That same day, I set up an old camera on the porch, hoping to catch whatever animal was messing with my garden. When I developed a film the next day, I nearly dropped the photos. In one shadowy image, standing in the field beyond my house, was a figure. It stood at least 8 feet tall, its outline blurry, but unmistakably watching my house. Food began disappearing from my locked pantry. I'd secure the door at night, only to find it broken open by morning. The lock twisted like it was made of clay. Only meat and salt were taken, and the containers left behind had strange, thick saliva on them. The worst part was when I started hearing John's voice. It happened first on a foggy morning as I was hanging laundry. "Eleanor," called a voice from the woods, my husband's voice, exactly as he used to call me in from the garden. I dropped the clothes and ran toward the sound, but found nothing. After that, his voice came more often, always from just beyond where I could see. The day I found my neighbor's cattle, I didn't even know I had neighbors was when true fear set in. 7 cows arranged in a perfect circle in my north field, all facing inward, all missing their eyes. I threw up right there and then, called the sheriff, but no one ever came. Each morning, I found my garden tools moved, sometimes arranged in crosses, sometimes bent into impossible shapes that would take machinery to create. And at night, I caught glimpses of a massive shadow moving past my windows, always just out of clear sight. The smell came next a powerful musky odor that appeared randomly in different rooms, so strong it made me dizzy and sick to my stomach. I started keeping a baseball bat by my bed and boards over the windows, but deep down, I knew these wouldn't help if whatever was out there decided to come in. Then one morning, I saw fresh tire tracks leading up my driveway. Hope surged through me. Someone had come in the night, maybe the sheriff finally responding to my calls. I followed the tracks on foot, but they led to an empty clearing and simply stopped, as if the vehicle had vanished into thin air. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a person, or even an animal. Whatever watched me from the woods was something else entirely, and it was getting bolder every day. Winter came early to the mountains that year. One night, when the temperature dropped below freezing, my power went out. I dragged the generator from the shed, but found it torn apart, its metal casing ripped open like a tin can. No animal could have done that damage. The parts were scattered across the yard, in what looked like a patina circle with lines pointing to the house. That same night, John's voice became clearer, not just calling my name anymore, but speaking full sentences. "Eleanor, why did you let me die?" His voice called from the darkness. "You knew the support beams were rotting. You never told me." I covered my ears and screamed because he was right. He had overheard the mine foreman talking about the bad supports, but never mentioned it to John. It was our private conversation, something no one else could have known. I stopped sleeping after that. Every night, something pounded on the walls, moving around the house in a pattern. Thump, 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 always in sets of 3, always stopping right before dawn. The root cellar was where I found them. I needed a place to store the last of my canned goods, and the house's small cellar seemed perfect. Behind a false wall, I discovered what looked like a shrine. Human bones arranged in a star pattern. I recognized a child's skull, a woman's delicate fingers, the remains of the family who had lived here before, arranged like some kind of sick art project. That night, the phone rang. I hadn't used it in weeks because the line was dead, but it rang, and when I answered, I heard breathing. Then John's voice whispered, "Come outside, Eleanor." I looked out the window to see the phone line wasn't just cut, it was woven into the branches of nearby trees, like decorations on a Christmas tree. My safe space grew smaller each day. First, I found those strange territorial markings 100 yards from the house, then 50, then 20. Soon the stripped bark and strange symbols carved into the wood surrounded my porch steps. I was being penned in. My food supplies, already running low, were the next target. Everything in the pantry was covered in a sticky black substance that made me violently ill when I tried to wash it off. The water from the taps ran brown, then black, smelling like the creature's musk. My few hours of sleep were filled with nightmares of the mine collapse. But they weren't just dreams, they were too real, too detailed. I saw things from John's perspective, felt the earth crushing him, heard his last thoughts, things I couldn't possibly know. One morning, after a rare hour of sleep, I went to the bathroom and found words written in the condensation on the mirror. "You belong to me now." The handwriting was John's, perfect, down to the way he crossed his T's. Time became strange. I would sit down to eat breakfast and suddenly find myself standing in the yard at sunset, with no memory of the hours in between. Once, I looked out the window and saw myself walking in the garden, but I was inside the house. The figure looked exactly like me, moved like me, but its eyes were wrong, too dark, too empty. I tried to fight back. I set traps around the property, snares and pits covered with branches. The next day, I found them all reset and moved closer to the house, now positioned to catch me instead. The weather changed overnight. A blizzard descended, burying the house in snow, while I could see clear skies just a mile down the mountain. It was as if the storm existed only around my property, trapping me inside. The sound started next, not just the pounding or John's voice, but high-pitched wails that made my ears bleed and my vision blur. I stuffed rags in my ears, but it didn't help. The sound seemed to come from inside my own head. The mail carrier was the last straw. I hadn't seen him in weeks, but one morning I found him at my gate. What was left of him? His skin had been removed and arranged on the ground to spell out a single word: mine. I tried to run then, packed a bag and made it halfway down the driveway before the trees themselves seemed to shift, blocking my path. No matter which way I turned, the road disappeared. I ended up back at the house, the door swinging open as if welcoming me home. That night, huddled in the corner of my bedroom with John's old shotgun across my lap, I realized the truth. I wasn't dealing with a wild animal or even a human killer. Something ancient lived in these mountains, something that had claimed this land long before people built homes here. And now, it had claimed me too. On what I think was the 30th day at the homestead, I'd lost track by then. It finally showed itself to me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, loading the last shells into John's shotgun, when the room went ice cold. My breath came out in white clouds. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. And there it was, standing in the doorway. It was tall, so tall its head brushed the ceiling. Its body was covered in dark, matted fur, but its face was almost human, with deep-set eyes that glowed amber in the darkness. Its mouth was too wide, filled with teeth like yellowed piano keys. I raised the shotgun, but my hands wouldn't move. My whole body was frozen, not from fear, but like something was holding me in place. The creature tilted its head, studying me. Then pain exploded behind my eyes as images flooded my mind. I was John, walking into the mine that last day. I felt his anger at me, his distraction as he missed the warning signs of the weak supports. I felt the crushing weight as the ceiling came down. Felt his last thought not of me, but of relief that the pain would end. When I came back to myself, I was on the floor, blood running from my nose. The creature was gone, but I knew it had just begun. The next day, the grocery delivery man came, the first visitor in weeks. I ran to him, begging for help, but he looked at me strangely. "Ma'am, I've been delivering your groceries for 3 weeks now," he said. "You signed for them yourself last Thursday." He showed me the receipt, with my signature perfect, identical to my handwriting. While I was trapped in the house, something had been pretending to be me in the outside world. That night, I tore apart the kitchen floor, following the strange, scratching sounds I'd been hearing. Beneath the house was a tunnel, not rough, like an animal's burrow, but smoothly carved, like someone had spent years digging it out. I followed it with a flashlight, gagging on the smell of rot and that musky odor. The tunnel opened into a large chamber beneath the property. The walls were lined with niches, each holding what looked at first like mannequins. When I raised my light higher, I screamed. There were bodies, dozens of them, preserved somehow. Their skin stretched tight over their bones. Men, women, children, all with their eyes open, all facing the center of the room. And in the center, a collection of personal items, photographs, jewelry, toys arranged in neat rows. I recognized items from the house above, belongings of the family who had lived here before. In one corner, I found newspaper clippings dating back over 100 years. Stories of missing families, mysterious disappearances, all centered around this property. The creature hadn't just killed the last family, it had been doing this for generations. And back to the house, packed whatever I could carry, and tried once more to escape. This time, the road was clear. Hope surged through me as I ran down the mountain path. Then I saw John standing in the middle of the road. "Eleanor," he said, smiling that smile I missed so much. "You don't have to run anymore." I stopped, wanting so badly to believe it was him. When he opened his arms, I stepped forward into his embrace. His touch burned like fire. Where his skin met mine, my flesh blistered and smoked. I screamed and pushed away, but it wasn't John anymore. The creature stood there, its mouth stretched in a horrible imitation of a smile. "I can give him back to you," it said, its voice like rocks grinding together. "Join my collection willingly, and you can be with him forever." I ran blindly into the woods, branches whipping my face. No matter which direction I turned, I somehow ended up moving back toward the house. The creature wasn't chasing me, was herding me, like a sheepdog with a lost lamb. Back at the house, I collapsed on the porch, exhausted. Through my tears, I noticed an old metal lockbox, half buried near the steps. Inside were property deeds dating back to 1843, all with the same signature, not a human name, but a strange symbol that matched the markings I'd seen on the trees. The truth hit me like a physical blow. The creature hadn't invaded my property, I had invaded its territory. It owned this land, had always owned it, and used the house as bait for its trap. That night, my skin began to change. Patches grew rough and dark, like the creature's fur. My fingers lengthened, nails hardening into claws. When I looked in the mirror, my eyes had turned amber. The creature was changing me, making me like it. In desperation, I soaked the house in kerosene and lit a match. The flames caught quickly, racing up the walls. I stood in the center of the inferno, ready to end this nightmare once and for all. But the fire didn't touch me. The flames parted around my body like water around a stone. Outside, I heard the creature's grinding laugh. As the house burned around me, I felt my thoughts being pulled away, like water down a drain. Memories of John, of my life before, were replaced by hungry, ancient instincts. Knowledge of hunting, trapping, collecting, the desire to preserve, to add to the collection. I fought it with everything I had, but it was too late. My body walked itself down to the underground chamber, while my mind screamed uselessly inside. The creature met me there, placing me gently in an empty niche in the wall. My body went rigid, unable to move, but my mind stayed awake, aware. "Watch and learn," the creature said, its voice now clear in my head. "Soon, new ones will come. They always do. Days or weeks later, time means nothing underground." I heard cars on the gravel driveway. Through some connection with the creature, I could see a family pulling up to a newly rebuilt house. A couple with 2 small children, excited about the beautiful, affordable new home in the mountains. The man unlocked the door, holding it open for his wife. "Welcome to our new beginning," he said. From my place in the wall, unable to move, unable to warn them, I could only watch as the cycle began again. The creature would watch them, test them, learn their fears, and I would help it. My consciousness now part of its hunting pattern, my memories feeding its disguises. This is my punishment for seeking escape from grief. This is my eternal role, now the shadow behind the homestead, the watcher in the walls, the trap for those who come after. And there will always be more who come, always more to join our collection. That was 5 years ago now. I've watched 3 families come and go since then, or rather, not go join us. The collection grows. The creature grows stronger with each new mind it absorbs. I've learned things in my time here. The creature is ancient, older than the Cherokee, who first avoided this valley, older than the settlers who later built upon cursed ground. It doesn't have a name, at least not one that human tongues can pronounce. It doesn't need to eat or sleep like we do. It feeds on fear, on grief, on the unique pain of hope being slowly crushed. Sometimes, in the quiet darkness between victims, I feel the others around me, their minds still conscious like mine, trapped in bodies that no longer obey them. We've formed a kind of community in our shared prison. We tell each other stories, sing songs in our heads, anything to hold on to what remains of our humanity. The mail carrier was right about the mountain walker. Local legends warned about it for generations, but people forget, or they don't believe, or the stories get twisted into campfire tales that no one takes seriously. The creature makes sure of that, using its collected minds to confuse the truth, to make people doubt. I can feel a new family coming now. The creature is excited, restless. It's redecorating the house, using our combined knowledge to make it perfect for them. A young couple. The woman is pregnant. The creature loves children they fear so beautifully, so completely. If you're reading this, it's too late for me. I'm part of it now. My mind slowly fading into the collective consciousness of all its victims. But maybe it's not too late for you. Check the history of any property before you buy, especially if the price seems too good to be true. Ask the locals, not just the real estate agent. Look for patterns of disappearances, for stories people tell with nervous laughter. And if you ever find yourself on a mountain road in West Virginia and see a beautiful old homestead with a for sale sign that seems perfect for a fresh start, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't even slow down, because I'll be watching from the trees. Not by choice, but because I have no choice anymore. And the part of me that's still human, still Eleanor, will be silently begging you to escape while you still can. The creature has learned your fears before you've even felt them. The trap is already set, and there's always room for one more in our collection. My name is Joshua Fleming. I used to be somebody in the academic world, a botanist with promising research on plant consciousness. That was before they all turned against me, called my work pseudoscience, and stripped me of my position at the university. 41 years old, and my career was over just like that. But I refused to give up. Science would vindicate me eventually. That's why I came out here, to this remote stretch of New Mexico desert 6 months ago, miles from civilization, just me and my plants. The perfect place to continue my research without interference, or so I thought. My research station isn't much, but it's functional. Solar panels provide all the power I need for my equipment and living quarters. The greenhouse is my pride and joy, filled with desert species displaying remarkable adaptation to extreme conditions. If I can unlock their secrets, maybe I can restore my reputation. I chose this location for its isolation, but the local Navajo have kept their distance for other reasons. An old man from a nearby settlement visited shortly after I arrived. He stood at the edge of my property, refusing to come closer. "This is sacred land," he told me. "Bad things walk here at night. Things that wear the skins of others." I thanked him politely and dismissed his warning as superstition. I'm a scientist, after all. 3 weeks after arriving, I discovered a small cave about a mile from my station. The walls were covered with ancient petroglyph screwed drawings of tall, shifting figures performing what looked like rituals. Some appeared human, others more animal-like, their forms blending together in disturbing ways. I took photos for my journal, thinking they might make an interesting footnote in my research. The isolation started getting to me around month 3. I'd talk to myself, to my plants, to anyone who would call on my satellite phone. Those calls became less frequent as colleagues stopped responding. I told myself it was better this way, no distractions from my work. That's when I started noticing changes in my plant specimens. Unusual growth patterns emerged, shapes that shouldn't occur naturally. Some developed strange colorations, vibrant hues that seemed to pulse in the darkness when I turned off the greenhouse lights. One night, I woke to sounds outside my station. Footsteps in the sand. Sometimes they sounded human, sometimes like something moving on 4 legs. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside, but the desert was empty and still. "Hello," I called out. "Is anyone there?" My voice echoed across the empty landscape, and for a moment I could have sworn I heard it echo back, perfectly mimicking my inflection. "Is anyone there?" That was the first night I felt it, the sensation of being watched by something ancient and patient, something that had been here long before me and considered me an intruder, something that was waiting for the right moment to make itself known. I tried to brush off those strange feelings, telling myself it was just the desert playing tricks on my mind. Being alone for months can do weird things to your thoughts. But then I found the campsite. It was about 2 miles from my small tent, backpacks, cooking gear, all abandoned, food still in containers, water bottles half full. The hikers' personal things were scattered around: phones, wallets, a camera with vacation photos still on it. But the people, gone without a trace. No signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing to explain why they'd just walk away from all their stuff. I called the ranger station on my satellite phone, but the connection was terrible. Static kept cutting through our conversation. They promised to send someone to check it out in a few days. 3 mornings later, I found the bodies. They were hidden among some rocks about a half-mile from the campsite. 2 of them, a man and a woman. But something was terribly wrong. Their bodies looked ... dried out, like all the water had been sucked right out of them. Their skin was like paper, stretched tight over bone, and their eyes, they were just empty sockets. I threw up right there in the sand. Once I pulled myself together, I took photos for the authorities and hurried back to my station to call it in. But my phone wouldn't connect at all this time. That night, I heard my own voice calling from different spots in the desert. Joshua, it would call from one direction. Then, Fleming, from another. My exact voice, but I wasn't speaking. I stayed locked inside, watching through the windows. The water in my glass started to taste funny. When I checked my supply, it looked normal, but something about it felt off. I started having strange dreams after drinking it, visions of skin peeling away from bone, of faces that weren't quite right. Time began to feel wrong too. The sun seemed to stay in the same spot for hours, then suddenly jump across the sky. My watch would say 2 p.m., but the sun would be setting. I started marking the walls with the dais, but sometimes I'd wake up to find extra marks I didn't remember making. One afternoon, a park ranger finally showed up. At first, I was relieved, but something about him felt wrong. He asked all the right questions about the missing hikers, but his eyes never blinked. Not once during our entire conversation. And when he thought I wasn't looking, his face seemed to shift somehow. Just for a second. "I'll need you to show me where you found the bodies," he said. "They're not far," I replied. "We can go right now." But then I noticed my plants in the greenhouse. They were all turning, like sunflowers following the sun. But they weren't turning toward the light. They were all facing the ranger, tracking his movements. "Actually," I said, "it's getting late. We should go tomorrow morning when we have better light." The ranger smiled. It was too wide. "Of course, Dr. Fleming. Tomorrow then." After he left, I checked my logbook and found entries I didn't remember writing. Detailed notes about the plants. Unusual behavior, written in my handwriting but with phrases I never use. That evening, as the sun was setting, I looked out my window toward the greenhouse and froze. There I was, someone who looked exactly like me working among my plants. I could see myself from behind, wearing my favorite faded blue shirt, moving between the tables just as I always do. But I was inside the main building, watching. I blinked hard, thinking it must be a hallucination from stress or tainted water. When I looked again, the greenhouse was empty. That night, I barricaded my door and kept my knife close. Something was out there, something that could look like me, and I was starting to think the Navajo elder had been right all along. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Every sound made me jump, the wind against the windows, the hum of my refrigerator, the normal creaks of a building settling. I must have dozed off eventually, because I woke with a start around 3 a.m. Something was in my lab. I could hear glass clinking and drawers opening. Moving quietly, I grabbed my knife and crept down the hallway. The lab door was slightly open, a thin beam of light spilling out. I peered through the crack and had to cover my mouth to keep from gasping. It was me, or something that looked exactly like me, methodically breaking my equipment. It moved the way I move, with the same slight limp in my right leg from an old hiking accident. It even muttered to itself in my voice as it worked, using phrases I use all the time. I backed away slowly, but my foot hit a creaky floorboard. The thing that looked like me stopped and turned toward the door. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and pushed my dresser in front of it. When morning came, I cautiously ventured out. The lab was a mess, microscopes smashed, samples destroyed, months of research ruined. The thing had known exactly what would hurt me most. That afternoon, I hiked to the nearest water source, a small spring about a mile away. It was completely dry, despite recent rainfall. As I stood there staring at the cracked earth, I noticed something in the distance, a group of shapes arranged. In a circle. I approached carefully. They were bodies. 5 of them, all dried out like the hikers I'd found earlier. But these were positioned deliberately, forming a pattern that matched one of the petroglyphs from the cave. As I stood there, frozen with horror, an old Navajo man appeared beside me. I hadn't heard him approach. "He should not be here," he said quietly. He was different from the man who had warned me months ago, Lauder, with eyes that had seen too much. "What is happening?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What is doing this?" "Ye Nald Lushi," he replied. "The Skinwalker. You built your home on its sacred ground, and now it wants yours." "My what?" "Your skin, your identity, your life." He looked at the bodies arranged in the ritual circle. "It's been feeding, gathering strength, preparing." "For what?" I asked. The part of me didn't want to know. "To become you completely. Not just in appearance. It wants your memories, your knowledge, your soul." I felt sick. How do I stop it? The old man shook his head. "You cannot. You can only leave this place. Now, today." But when I turned to look at him again, he was gone. Just like that. Maybe he was never there at all. I practically ran back to my station, desperate to pack my things and leave. But as I approached, I saw a government vehicle parked outside. 3 people in suits were examining the area around my building. Relief washed over me. Help had finally arrived. I hurried toward them, waving my arms. "Thank God you're here," I called out. "There's something out here killing people." All 3 turned to look at me simultaneously. Their movements were too coordinated, too smooth. "Dr. Fleming," they said, in perfect unison. In my voice, I stopped dead in my tracks. Each of their faces was subtly wrong, like masks that didn't quite fit right. Their eyes were all identical my eyes. I backed away slowly, then turned and ran into the desert. I didn't know where I was going, just away from those things. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. Night fell. I huddled behind a large rock formation, trying to stay hidden. That's when I found it a small cave, different from the one with the petroglyphs. Inside were skins, human skins, preserved somehow, hanging like grotesque suits waiting to be worn. Some were old and withered, others fresher. With mounting horror, I realized what the Skinwalker had been doing all these years. It doesn't just mimic its victims, it wears them, becomes them. And now it wanted to become me. Worse, I wasn't even sure anymore if I was still me. What if the real Joshua Fleming was already gone? What if I was just another copy, walking around with false memories, thinking I was the original? As this thought took hold, I felt my grip on reality begin to slip away entirely. I spent that night in the cave, hidden among the horrors, afraid to leave. The hanging skins were less frightening than what waited outside. At least they couldn't hurt me anymore. Dawn broke, and I knew I needed to make a run for my truck. If I could just reach civilization, maybe I could escape this nightmare. I crept out of the cave and made my way carefully through the desert, staying low and using rocks for cover. As I approached my station, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Me, 5 of me, all standing in the yard, looking in different directions, as if searching. They moved exactly like I do, with all my little habits, the way I push my hair back, how I stand with my weight on my left leg, even the nervous tap of my fingers against my thigh when I'm thinking. I ducked behind a boulder, heart pounding, so loud I was sure they could hear it. How could I get past them to my truck? As I weighed my options, the desert around me began to change. The plant's ordinary desert vegetation I'd been studying for months were moving, not swaying in the wind, but actually pulling their roots from the sand and repositioning themselves. They were forming a kind of net around me, a living trap. The Skinwalker was using the desert itself against me. A cactus suddenly stretched toward me, its spines elongating like reaching fingers. I scrambled backward, cutting my hand on a rock. Blood dripped onto the sand, and all the plants seemed to lean toward it, drawn to the moisture. That's when I understood. The Skinwalker was a kind of vampire, not of blood, but of water. That's why the bodies were so dried out, why the springs had gone dry. It drained the moisture from everything it touched. A shadow fell over me. I looked up to see myself now, the Skinwalker, wearing my appearance, standing above me. Its face was almost perfect, but the eyes were all wrong. Empty, ancient. "Joshua Fleming," it said in my voice, "your research was correct. Plants do have consciousness. They speak to me. They watch for me. They help me hunt. What do you want?" I whispered, though I already knew. "To be you, to know what you know, to add your life to my collection." It gestured around us. "I have been here for over 100 years, taking new skins when the old ones wear out. Yours is ... special, a scientist, a mind that understands the plants I command. Please," I begged, "let me go. I'll never come back." The thing that looked like me smiled. "But you're already part of me. Don't you remember? I took you days ago." A chill ran through me. "No, that's not true." "Then how did you know where to find my skin collection? How did you know to hide there last night?" Its smile widened. "Because I put that knowledge in. You are just another piece of me now, with memories I gave you." I shook my head, trying to deny it, but doubt was creeping in. How much of what I remembered was real? Was I really Joshua Fleming, or just a copy with implanted memories? "Come," said the Skinwalker. "It's time for the final ritual." I felt my body stand against my will. Whatever connection it had formed with me was growing stronger. The desert, plants parted to form a path, leading toward a circle of stones I hadn't noticed before. In the center of the circle was a stone altar, ancient and stained dark with what I didn't want to acknowledge was blood. The 5 other copies of me were already there, waiting. As I approached, They began to change, their faces melting and reforming into different people. Men, women, children, elders, a century of victims all wearing pieces of my skin, my clothes, my identity. We are all part of the collection, they said in unison, their voices a terrible chorus of my own voice, mixed with dozens of others. And now, you join us completely. The skinwalker guided me to the altar, and I couldn't resist. It laid me down on the cold stone. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The desert plants grew rapidly around the altar, wrapping around my wrists and ankles, holding me in place. Your consciousness will remain, the skinwalker explained calmly as it raised a stone knife. You will see through my eyes, feel through my hands, but you will never again control them. The knife descended toward my forehead, not to kill me, but to begin the ritual that would permanently bind my identity to the skinwalker's collection. As the cold stone touched my skin, my mind fractured. I saw flashes of other lives, all the people the skinwalker had taken over the years. Their memories became mine, their terror my terror. Then darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in my research station, looking down at my hands. They moved when I wanted them to move. I felt normal. Had it all been a nightmare? I checked my calendar. 3 days had passed that I couldn't remember. My lab was pristine, no sign of the damage I remembered. Outside, my truck was packed with my belongings. There was a note on the table in my handwriting. Returning to university. Research complete. I felt a moment of confusion. Then clarity washed over me. Yes, of course. My research was finished. It was time to return to academia. They would welcome me back now. I had discovered such interesting things about plant adaptation and consciousness. I smiled as I climbed into my truck and started the engine. So many people to meet at the university. New students, new colleagues, new skins to add to my collection. As I drove away from the research station, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. Just for a second, my face seemed to shift, revealing something ancient and hungry underneath. But then it was gone, and I was just Dr. Joshua Fleming, again, returning triumphantly to the world that had rejected me. And I was so very, very thirsty. My name is Diane Callahan. I'm 35 years old, and I used to be an artist people actually cared about. That was before everything fell apart, before Mark left, before the gallery dropped me, before the panic attacks started. That's why I'm here, in this tiny cabin tucked away in the Kentucky mountains where no one can find me. I need to paint again. I need to remember who I am. The rental listing called it an artist's retreat. When I pulled up yesterday, exhausted after the long drive, I thought they got that part right at least. The cabin sits in a small clearing surrounded by dense forest. No neighbors, no distractions, just me and my easel and the quiet. The owner, an older man named Jim, handed me the keys with a strange look. Last tenant left in a hurry, he said. Good artist too. Left all her supplies behind. I didn't think much of it then. Free art supplies. Lucky me. This morning I hiked a little, trying to find something, anything that might spark inspiration. That's when I found the cave. It wasn't deep, more of a shallow rock shelter, but the walls were covered in paintings, old ones, ancient, maybe. Red and black figures dancing around what looked like a bonfire, and something watching them from above, something with horns. I took pictures, feeling that familiar excitement I get when inspiration hits. By the time I got back to the cabin, my head was buzzing with ideas. I set up my easel, and then, well, I don't really remember much after that. I just know that when I finally stopped painting, it was dark outside. My hands were stained with paint, and in front of me stood 3 finished canvases. 3. I hadn't completed a single painting in over a year, and suddenly I'd made 3 in one day. They were good. 2 maybe the best work I've ever done. Dark forests, shadowy figures, and in each one, barely visible in the background, the silhouette of a railroad bridge stretching across a ravine. That night, I heard it for the first time giggling, like a child playing hide-and-seek just outside my window. I got up to look, but there was nothing there except darkness and trees swaying in the wind. The next day, I walked further into the woods and actually found it the railroad bridge from my paintings. A massive curved trestle spanning across a deep gorge. It looked exactly like what I'd painted, even though I'd never seen it before. An old man was fishing in the creek nearby. When he saw me staring at the bridge, he packed up his gear quickly. "You staying at Jim's rental?" he asked, and when I nodded, he frowned. "That trestle ain't safe. Train still runs through once a night. People die up there. People, hikers, mostly, teenagers, artists. He said the last word like it explained everything. They get caught on the bridge when the train comes. No place to go but down. That's if the Poplik monster doesn't get them first. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but his face stayed serious. What's a Poplik monster? Half-man, half-goat thing. Lives under the trestle. Lures people up there with tricks. Been happening for years. I thanked him for the warning, thinking he was just an old man trying to scare the city girl. But as I walked back to the cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Back at the cabin, I painted like never before. Hours disappeared. Sometimes I'd start when the sun was rising and suddenly it would be dark, my stomach growling because I'd forgotten to eat. I painted that trestle over and over, from different angles, in different lights, sometimes with a small figure standing on it, sometimes with a train approaching, sometimes with something else, something with horns watching from the shadows. One night, when I couldn't sleep, I went down to the basement to look for more canvas. That's when I found them stacks of paintings leaning against the wall, covered in dust. They weren't mine. They must have belonged to the previous tenant. I pulled them out one by one, my hands shaking as I realized what I was seeing. They were paintings of me driving up to the cabin, me finding the cave paintings, me standing at my easel, me discovering the trestle, all painted weeks, maybe months before I ever arrived. That same night, I woke up to the sound of a train whistle. Distant but clear. I got out of bed and saw that my latest painting had changed. The figure on the bridge was more detailed now, woman with my hair, my clothes, and behind her on the tracks, the headlight of an approaching train. I backed away, telling myself it was just my imagination, just a dream. That's when I saw it through the window just for a second, tall, thin shape at the edge of the trees, walking on two legs but not quite human, its head crowned with long curved horns. It was looking right at me. And then I heard the giggling again. Only this time, it didn't sound like a child at all. I couldn't sleep after what I saw. I kept telling myself it was just shadows playing tricks, just my tired brain making up things. But deep down, I knew better. The next morning, I found a new painting on my easel. I have no memory of making it. It showed a young couple hiking near the trestle. The man was taking a selfie while the woman looked scared, pointing at something. In the trees, I hadn't met any hikers here, hadn't painted any either, at least not that I remembered. That same afternoon, I heard voices outside. A man and a woman were walking past my cabin, backpacks on, maps in hand. The same couple from the painting. My heart started racing as I watched them head in the direction of the trestle. I should have warned them. I should have run out and told them to turn back, but I didn't. Instead, I picked up my brush and started painting again. This time, I knew exactly what I was doing, but I couldn't stop myself. It was like someone else was moving my hand. The painting showed the couple, on the trestle, the train coming, them running, not making it. That night, I heard the train whistle, then screams, then nothing. In the morning, there was a small news story on my phone, 2 hikers missing in the area. I felt sick. The paintings were telling the future, or worse, they were making it happen. Later that day, as I was washing my brushes, I swear one moved, on its own, twitching like a finger beckoning me. When I looked at my paints, the red seemed redder, almost like fresh blood. I dropped everything and ran outside, needing air, needing to clear my head. That's when I felt it a pull toward the trestle, like a magnet drawing me. I found myself walking there without deciding to. The closer I got, the more I heard whispers in my head, a voice that wasn't mine. Paint for me, Diane. Create for me. At the base of the trestle, I found a small, hidden path. It led underneath to a sort of cave. The walls were covered with paintings decades worth. By the look of them, some were faded with age, others looked fresher. Each showed someone dying on the tracks above, and each was signed by a different artist. I ran back to the cabin, locked the door, and tried calling Jim to tell him I was leaving. No signal, of course. That night, I dreamt I was painting, but the paint was alive, crawling across the canvas like insects. When I woke up, there was a new painting finished beside my bed. It showed a woman misstanding on the trestle at night, a train light shining behind her, and standing in front of her was the monster, half man, half goat, just like the old fisherman said. In the painting, it was reaching out to me, offering me something that glowed in its hand. The next day, things got even worse. I saw one of the shadows from my paintings, a small, twisted figure, step right out of the canvas and skitter across the floor before disappearing under the door. I screamed and no one heard me. I tried to leave then, packed my car and everything, but it wouldn't start. The battery was dead, though it had been fine just days before. That night, as I sat staring at my phone hoping for a signal, the screen suddenly lit up with a message. Not a text or an email, words just appeared, typing themselves. Come to the trestle at midnight. Bring your brushes. I deleted it. The message reappeared. Your art has never been more powerful. I can make you great again. All I need is a small sacrifice. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. In the silence that followed, I heard the train whistle in the distance. It was getting closer to midnight. I sat in the dark, fighting the urge to go to the trestle. My body ached with the need to paint, to create. Ideas filled my head, amazing, brilliant ideas that could make me famous again. All I had to do was go to the trestle. No, I wouldn't go. I barricaded the door with a chair, covered the windows, sat in the middle of the room with my arms wrapped around my knees. But as midnight approached, my hands started moving on their own. My feet carried me to the door. The chair moved itself. Outside, the night was alive with whispers. The trees seemed to bend toward the path to the trestle, and standing at the edge of the forest was the Popelik monster, its goat eyes glowing in the moonlight, its human-like hands beckoning me forward. I've been waiting for you, Diane, it said, its voice like dry leaves rustling. Your paintings are the best I've had in years. So much power, so much fear. What are you? I whispered. I am art. I am creation. I am what happens when the line between imagination and reality breaks. It smiled, showing teeth too sharp to be human. And I am very, very hungry. I stood frozen as the creature stepped closer. Up close, it was even more terrifying, skin-like weathered leather, legs bent backward like a goat's, but with human hands and eyes that looked ancient and knowing. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice shaking. The same thing I've wanted from every artist who stays in that cabin. Your creativity, your fear, your life. It pointed one long finger toward the trestle. Up there. Why me? Why artists? The monster tilted its head, its horns catching the moonlight. Artists see things others don't, feel things deeper. Your fear is ... richer. And when you create while afraid, the power in that creation feeds me. I looked back at the cabin, wondering if I could make a run for it. As if reading my mind, the monster laughed. The others tried running too. Look what happened to them. It waved its hand, and suddenly the trees around us were full of paintings, from branches, leaning against trunks. Each showed a different person, their faces twisted in fear, their bodies caught on the trestle as a train approached. These are all real people, I whispered. Artists who stayed in the cabin for over 100 years. The monster nodded. Each one painted their own death. Each one fed me with their fear and their talent. And now it's your turn. The train whistle sounded in the distance, closer now. I won't do it, I said, trying to sound brave. I won't paint for you anymore. The monster smiled wider. You already have. With horror, I realized I was holding my brushes and a small travel canvas. I didn't remember grabbing them, but there they were in my hands. The train will be here in 20 minutes, the monster said. Plenty of time for one last masterpiece. My feet started moving toward the trestle. I tried to stop, tried to turn around, but my body wouldn't listen. It was like being a passenger in my own skin. Why the trestle? I managed to ask as we walked. Why not just kill us in the cabin? The trestle is special, the monster said, walking beside me. A place, between places, life and death balanced on a thin rail, with the fall waiting below. Perfect for the moment when art and reality meet. We reached the base of the trestle. It loomed above us, steel and wood stretching across the gorge, disappearing into darkness. Start climbing, the monster ordered. My legs obeyed, though my mind screamed not to. Step by step, I climbed the steep path up to the tracks. The wood creaked under my feet as I stepped onto the trestle. Far in the distance, I could see the light of the approaching train. Maybe 10 minutes away now. The monster stood at the center of the trestle. Set up here, it said. My hands unpacked my small easel, set up the canvas, opened my paints. What am I supposed to paint? I asked. Though I already knew. Your death, the monster said simply. Make it beautiful. My hand dipped the brush in paint and started moving across the canvas. I fought it, tried to drop the brush, but my fingers wouldn't obey. As I painted, the monster circled me, its eyes glowing brighter. "Do you know what happens to the artists after?" it asked conversationally, as if we were just chatting at a gallery opening. "They don't die, not really. Their bodies do, but their souls, their creativity that becomes part of me, part of my collection." It gestured to the air around us, and suddenly I could see them, ghostly figures floating around the trestle. Dozens of them, men and women from different times, their clothes from decades past, their faces hollow and sad. Artists trapped between worlds. "They create for me forever," the monster said. "Beautiful things, terrible things, whatever I hunger for." The train whistle blew again, much closer now. I could feel the tracks starting to vibrate under my feet. I looked down at what I'd painted, a woman standing on the trestle, a train bearing down on her, and the monster beside her, reaching for her as she fell. It was almost done. "Why do you need me to paint it?" I asked, desperate to stall. "Why not just push me in front of the train?" "Because art has power," the monster hissed. "When you paint your own death, knowing it's real, knowing it's coming, that creates a doorway I can use, a way to capture your soul before it escapes." The train rounded the bend. I could see its bright headlight cutting through the night, maybe a mile away now. In that moment, I realized something: the monster needed the painting to be finished. It needed my cooperation, my creativity, to complete its ritual. I fought harder against its control, focusing every bit of my will on my painting hand. For just a second, I felt my fingers respond to me again. I changed the painting, just one small detail, while the monster was distracted by the approaching train. In my painting, I added something to the woman's hand: a broken brush, pointed like a weapon, aimed at the monster's chest. The monster's head snapped toward me, its eyes widening. "What have you done?" I looked down at my real hand. The brush I was holding had snapped, leaving a jagged, pointed end. "You said it yourself," I said. "Art has power." The train was almost upon us, its horn blaring, the light blinding. The trestle shook violently. With all my strength, I lunged forward and drove the broken brush into the monster's chest, right where I'd painted it. It screamed a sound like tearing metal and breaking wood. Its body began to shimmer, parts of it turning flat and two-dimensional, like a painting coming apart. "You can't kill me," it snarled. "I am eternal. I am creation itself." "Maybe," I said, "but I just changed the story." The train was seconds away. I had no time to run. As the monster thrashed and clawed at the brush in its chest, the ghostly artists around us began to change too. Their faces grew more solid, their eyes more alive. The monster reached for me one last time. "You'll still die here, but not for you," I said. I closed my eyes as the train hit, but instead of pain, I felt ... nothing. Then hands pulling me upward, away from the tracks, into the air. The ghostly artists were lifting me, carrying me off the trestle as the train thundered below. The monster howled as the train struck it, its body shattering like canvas and frame, pieces scattering into the gorge below. The artists set me down gently in the forest beyond the trestle. One by one, they smiled at me, their forms growing brighter, then fading like mist in morning light. Free. I walked back to the cabin alone. My paintings were still there, but different now. The monster was gone from them. The scenes peaceful instead of threatening. In the basement, I found the paintings from the previous tenant. They showed me not dying on the trestle, but walking away from it. She had seen this ending too. I packed my things the next morning. As I was loading my car, which now started perfectly, Jim pulled up in his truck. "Leaving already?" he asked. "Most artists stay at least a month." "I got what I needed," I said. "But you should tell the next one what happened to the others." He looked uncomfortable. "Don't know what you mean." I handed him a painting I'd done that morning, the cabin with a for sale sign in front, not a for rent one. "Sell the place, Jim," I said, "or burn it down. But don't rent it to any more artists." As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. For just a second, I thought I saw something at the edge of the tree snot, the monster, but a young woman, paint-stained hands waving goodbye. I waved back, then turned onto the main road, heading home with my sketchbook full of new ideas, real ideas, my ideas. Sometimes at night, I still hear the train whistle in my dreams, but it's fading, little by little, and the giggling in the woods, that stopped for good. My name is Vincent Kowalski. I used to work at the steel mill in Pittsburgh until the accident took my right arm 3 years ago. The company men, the doctors, the physical therapists, they all wanted to help me adjust to city life as a cripple. I had other plans. I bought this cabin in the Montana wilderness with my settlement money. Most people thought I was crazy, running away from civilization. Maybe I am. But out here, I answered to no one. I don't need their pity or their handouts. I spent 2 years getting ready, learning to hunt with one arm, preserving food, patching wounds without a doctor. By the time I moved in last spring, my cabin was perfect. Solar panels for basic power, a wood stove that could heat the place even in the harshest cold, and enough preserved food to last a full year if hunting got tough. I was ready for anything, or so I thought. The local Blackfoot tribe members I met in town gave me strange looks when I mentioned where my cabin was located. One old man finally pulled me aside at the general store. "That valley is cursed," he told me, his voice barely above a whisper. "Long ago, people broke the most sacred taboo there. They consumed human flesh during a terrible winter. Something woke up and never went back to sleep. We call it the Wendigo, the hunger that walks." I laughed it off. I'd heard plenty of campfire stories before. Besides, I had real concerns, like making sure my generator worked and my roof wouldn't leak when winter came. That was before the animals disappeared. It happened slowly at first. The deer trails near my cabin, once busy with daily traffic, went quiet. The rabbits that used to nibble at the edges of my small vegetable garden vanished. Even the birds seemed to avoid flying directly over my property. I blamed it on natural migration patterns until I found the campsite. It was just 3 miles from my cabin, hidden in a small clearing. A family had been camping there, 2 tents, one large and one small. Both were shredded, not from the outside in like a bear attack, but from the inside out, as if something had been trying to escape. The ground was dark with old blood. That's when I saw the bones, human bones, scattered around the campsite like someone had been gnawing on them and spitting out the hard parts. The teeth marks were all wrong, too big for a bear, too sharp for a wolf. Nothing I recognized. I should have packed up and left that day, but winter was coming, and I'm stubborn. I've never run from a challenge. A week later, Jake Morrison stopped by. He's an old trapper who checks his lines about 20 miles of rough country from my place. I'd met him a few times in town, and he seemed to respect my desire for solitude. "Thought I'd check on you before the big snow," he said, refusing to step more than 3 feet inside my door. His eyes kept darting to the windows. "You planning to stay through winter?" When I nodded, his face went gray. "Listen to me, son. There's something in these woods. Something old. The natives call it Wendigo. I call it the hunger that walks. It wakes up every few decades when the conditions are just right." He glanced outside at the unseasonably warm November day. "Early thaws wake it, and once it's up, it's hungry." I offered him dinner, a place to sleep. He just shook his head. "I won't be here after dark," was all he said before leaving. That night, the temperature dropped like a stone. My thermometer read -40 degrees Fahrenheit, though the weather service had predicted nothing below -10 degrees Fahrenheit. The cold seemed to seep through the walls despite my roaring fire. I checked my food stores the next morning and found a strange blue mold growing on my preserved meat. Meat I'd salted and dried myself. Meat that should have lasted months. Now it reeked of decay. That night I heard the howling for the first time. It wasn't a wolf. Wolves, I know. This sounded almost human, like a person trying to form words through a throat not made for human speech. I found the footprints the next morning. They circled my cabin, starting as human prints, then elongating, changing, the toes stretching into claws, before shifting back to human again, like something learning to walk. The smell came next, a stench of rot and decay that would appear. Suddenly, in different parts of my cabin, I'd scrub everything with bleach, wash myself raw, but it would return, following me like a cloud. My dreams changed too. I started seeing myself running through the woods, hunting, not with a rifle, but on all fours, tearing into warm flesh with my teeth. I'd wake up with the taste of copper in my mouth, my pillow stained with something dark. 2 weeks after his visit, I hiked to Morrison's cabin. The door hung open, swinging in the bitter wind. Inside, the place was destroyed, furniture splintered, supplies scattered. I found Jake in the bedroom, or what was left of him. His body was still warm, That night, as I huddled by my fire, I felt a gnawing in my stomach, a hunger unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I ate 3 cans of stew, half a loaf of bread, jerky, dried apples. Nothing helped. The hunger remained, a living thing inside me. When I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I stumbled back in shock. The face that stared back was gaunt, skeletal, with sunken eyes and skin stretched tight over bone. But when I touched my face, it felt normal. I weighed myself unchanged. My voice started changing too, growing deeper, raspier. Sometimes words I didn't recognize would tumble from my lips, sounds that didn't even seem human. I told myself there were logical explanations. Contaminated food, carbon monoxide from my stove, maybe even a brain injury from a fall I didn't remember. But deep down, I knew something was out there in the woods, something hungry, and it had chosen me. The cold got worse. Not normal winter cold, but something that felt alive, like it was targeting me. I'd sit right next to the wood stove with flames roaring and still see my breath. Ice formed on the inside of my windows, spreading in patterns that looked almost like handprints. That's when I saw it for the first time. I was chopping more firewood, hoping physical work would warm me up. Movement caught my eye at the tree line. I thought it was a deer at first, something tall and thin. But when I looked directly at it, my stomach dropped. It stood at least 8 feet tall, so skinny it seemed impossible it could stand. Its skin was pulled tight over bones, grayish-white like old snow. The face was the worst part, almost human, but stretched too long, with yellowed fangs that didn't fit in its mouth. It watched me with eyes that glowed slightly in the dim winter light. When it saw me looking, it smiled. I ran back inside, locked the door, and grabbed my rifle, but the creature was gone. After that, my thoughts started changing. I'd catch myself thinking about things I never would have before, like how the last can of beef stew wasn't satisfying because the meat wasn't fresh enough, how much better it would taste if I could hunt something ... bigger. I started losing time. I'd sit down to read in the morning, then suddenly it would be dark outside. I'd find mud and blood on my boots by the door, with no memory of going outside. Once, I found a half-fattened rabbit on my kitchen table, its fur and bones scattered across my plates. My mouth tasted like copper. One morning, I found something outside my door. A gift, a piece of fresh meat, still warm despite the freezing temperature. It wasn't from any animal I recognized. Deep down, I knew what it was, but I couldn't admit it, even to myself. I buried it in the snow far from my cabin. The next night, as I tried to sleep, images flashed through my mind that weren't my memories. A hiker, lost in a snowstorm, seeing my cabin's lights, relief on his face. Then terror as something stepped from the shadows behind him. I felt his final moments, the pain, the fear. I woke up screaming, but it wasn't my voice anymore. My body started changing too. My fingers seemed longer each morning, the nails thicker, and more like claws. My teeth ached constantly, feeling too big for my mouth. I had to duck to get through doorways I used to walk through icily. The hunger got worse. Food did nothing to help. I started thinking that maybe, just maybe, there was only one thing that would satisfy it. It's just survival, I whispered to myself one night. Out here, everything is about survival, adapting, evolving. A massive snowstorm hit, burying the access road under 15 feet of snow. The phone lines went down. Even if I wanted to leave, now, I couldn't. I was trapped until spring. That night, I heard a voice in my head, clear as day, but without sound. Accept the hunger, it said, embrace it. Let me in completely, and the pain will end. I knew it was the creature, the Wendigo. It had been working its way into my mind all along. What do you want? I asked aloud, my voice cracking. To share, came the reply in my thoughts. The hunger is eternal, but it doesn't have to hurt. Accept it. Join us. I was still arguing with the voice when I heard the sound that made my heart stop, crunching footsteps in the snow outside, followed by a knock on my door. Hello, is anyone there? I'm lost. Please, I need help. A human voice, a real person. My mouth watered instantly, my stomach cramped with need. I felt my nails digging into my palms hard enough to draw blood. I opened the door to see a young man in expensive skiing gear, clearly exhausted and frightened. He'd gotten separated from his group during the storm. Thank God, he said, stumbling inside. I thought I was going to die out there. You're safe now. I told him, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. Let me help you. As I took his coat, my hand brushed against his. The warmth of his skin sent a shock through me. I could smell the blood pulsing beneath his skin. You're hurt, he said, looking at my hand. I'd cut myself on my own sharpened nails without realizing it. Before I could stop myself, I grabbed his arm where a scratch leaked a thin line of red. So are you. I don't remember putting his blood in my mouth. I just remember the taste, like lightning and fire and life itself. The rush was immediate, a pleasure so intense it made me dizzy. The skier pulled away, eyes wide with fear. What the hell, man? I could feel changes rippling through my body. Faster now, bones shifting, muscles stretching. The hunger roared through me like a living thing. I'm sorry, I managed to say, backing away. You need to leave now. Are you crazy? There's a blizzard out there. Better the storm than in here, with me, I whispered. That's when we heard the howling. Not just one voice now, but many. A pack. The skier ran to the window. What is that? Wolves. No, I said, suddenly understanding what the Wendigo had meant by us. They were people once. 3 days later, there was another knock at my door. This time, it was a game warden, in a heavy green uniform, just doing welfare checks after the big storm. He said cheerfully, stomping snow from his boots. Had a report of a missing skier in the area. I let him in, but not because I wanted to help. The man who entered my cabin wasn't Vincent Kowalski anymore. That man was fading, being consumed from the inside out by something ancient and hungry. As I closed the door behind him, I caught my reflection in the window glass. My eyes glowed, slightly in the dim light of my cabin, and somewhere in the woods, the pack howled, welcoming a new hunt. The game warden walked around my cabin, making small talk. I barely heard his words. All I could focus on was the sound of his heart beating, the smell of warm blood under his skin. You've lost weight since your ID photo, he said, looking at my hunting license on the wall. Everything okay up here? Getting enough supplies? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. My thoughts weren't human anymore. I was seeing him as prey, noticing how he moved, where he was weak. We've had reports of some unusual predator activity in the area, he continued, looking out my window at the endless white, a missing skier, some abandoned camps. You seen anything strange? The voice in my head, the Wendigo's voice, was giving me instructions now. How to position myself between the warden and the door. How to move quickly, without warning. Nothing unusual, I said. My voice sounded wrong too, deep, like talking through gravel. The warden turned, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. Too late, he sensed the danger. What happened to your eyes? He asked, backing up slowly. I didn't answer. I just moved. Faster than should be possible. Stronger than a one-armed man should be. I won't describe what happened next. Some horrors shouldn't be put into words. I'll just say that the hunger finally stopped for a little while. The Wendigo joined me for the feast. I could see it clearly now, no longer hiding in shadows or the corner of my eye. We ate together, and with each bite, I felt less human and more ... something else. We have been waiting for you. The creature spoke, not in my mind now, but with a real voice, rough and ancient. So few are strong enough to become. Become what? I asked, though I already knew. Wendigo, hunter, Eternal. After that night, whatever was left of Vincent Kowalski disappeared completely. The hunger was my only reality now, and the joy of the hunt. I learned that there were others, a pack of Wendigo that roamed these mountains. Some were centuries old, others newer. All had once been human before the hunger changed them. The cold couldn't touch me anymore. I could run through chest-deep snow like it was nothing. My senses were sharper than any animal's. I could smell a human miles away, hear a heartbeat through cabin walls. We hunted together, the pack and I first. We targeted the isolated cabins in our territory, the lone trappers, the winter caretakers, the survivalists like I had once been. Easy prey, with no one to miss them until spring. I discovered I had a talent the others valued. I could still pass for human if I concentrated, forced my body to remember its old shape. My new packmates sent me into town during a break in the winter storms. Find us more, they said. Bring them to the hunting grounds. It was surprisingly easy. A friendly face at the general store, warning hikers about wolf attacks, but offering a safe route on a hand-drawn map. A helpful stranger at the bar suggesting perfect camping spots to tourists. Each victim I lured back became food for the pack, and those we didn't finish completely, they became new hunters, the hunger spreading through them like a disease. By March, the regional authorities noticed something was wrong. Too many missing persons reports, too many abandoned vehicles found at trailheads they sent in search. Parties, then more game wardens. Finally, a small military unit with special training in mountain rescue. None of them returned. By April, the entire mountain region was empty of human life. Just abandoned cabins, scattered gear, and odd footprints. In the mud, as the snow melted, the local towns put up roadblocks and warning signs. The Blackfoot tribal elders performed ancient rituals to contain what they knew had awakened. But the hunger can't be contained forever. Sometimes, on clear nights when the moon is full, I remember fragments of being human. The steel mill, the accident, the taste of coffee on cold mornings. But these memories mean nothing now. I have become something ancient and powerful. I will never age, never die of natural causes. The price is the hunger, constant, burning, never fully satisfied. Winter is coming again soon. The pack is growing, nearly 30 strong now. We've learned to be more careful, to hunt farther from our territory, to leave no traces that would bring more armed men into our mountains. But as the first snow falls, we feel the stirring of excitement. The hunting will be good this year, and somewhere out there, someone else will make the choice I made, to embrace the hunger, to become the monster rather than die as prey. The Wendigo always finds those who are ready to change, and the hunger never ends. Spring came and went, then summer. The authorities eventually labeled the entire valley as hazardous due to unidentified predator activity. They posted warning signs at every access point and told the press it was likely a rogue bear or wolf pack. They have no idea what's really waiting in these woods, how a pack grows stronger each season. We've learned to spread out, to hunt in smaller groups, to leave fewer traces. The smarter ones among us, like me, can still remember enough about being human to plan, to think ahead. During the warmer months, we range farther from our territory, sometimes hundreds of miles. I've walked into small towns at night, looking almost normal if I stay in shadows, and listened to people tell stories about the Montana monster or the Hunger Mountain killings. They turn it into campfire tales, never guessing the real horror. None of us expected the change to be permanent. The old legends suggested Wendigos could be cured, that they could become human again if they resisted the hunger long enough. But that's just a story people tell themselves for comfort. The truth, once you've tasted human flesh, once the hunger gets into your bones, there's no going back. The change rewrites everything you are, from your body to your soul. Last winter, I found my old cabin again. It was strange to see it through my new eyes, so small, so fragile. I found my journal there, dusty but intact. Reading my own handwriting was like looking at the words of a stranger. That man, that Vincent Kowalski who came to these mountains, looking for peace and solitude, is gone forever. Sometimes I wonder if he could have fought harder, resisted longer. If he'd left at the first sign of the Wendigo, would he still be human somewhere, living a normal life? But that's not how hunger works. It finds the weak spot in you, the small darkness that already exists, and it grows there until nothing else remains. Tonight, as I watch the first snow of a new winter falling, I smell wood smoke from a cabin built this summer, just beyond the warning signs. New prey, ignorant and unprepared. I can hear their heartbeats, count their breaths. 3 of them, young, strong. The hunger rises in me, sharp and demanding. The pack gathers in the trees behind me, their eyes glowing like distant stars. We don't need words anymore. We share a single purpose. As I move forward through the snow, I wonder if any of them will have the strength to become like us, to join the eternal hunt. I hope so. The hunger is terrible, but the loneliness is worse, and winter is so very long. My name is Margaret Donovan. I'm 52 years old, and I live alone in the Oregon wilderness. Some might call me paranoid, but I prefer the term prepared. I've spent the last 5 years building what I call the compound, my fortress against the end of the world. I know what you're thinking. Another crazy lady waiting for doomsday. But I've seen things in my military career that would make your skin crawl. As an army medic, I patched up soldiers while bullets flew overhead. I know what humans are capable of, and I know that nuclear war isn't a question of if, but when. My family used to laugh at my hobby, My husband John would roll his eyes whenever I'd stockpile canned goods or practice emergency drills with our kids, Sam and Emily. They humored me, but they never truly believed. Then came the accident. Black ice on a mountain road. A guardrail that couldn't hold. I wasn't with them that night. Sometimes I think that was my punishment, to survive while they didn't. After the funeral, something broke inside me. The grief became a hollow space that I filled with concrete walls and razor wire. If I couldn't protect my family then, I'd make damn sure I could protect myself now. The compound became my obsession, my reason to wake up each morning. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that I wasn't the only one staking a claim to this land. The forest has secrets older than America itself. The local tribes have stories about men who become wolves, or wolves who become men. I should have paid more attention to those stories, because now I know the truth. This land already belonged to someone, something, and they don't appreciate trespassers. I finished building the compound last month. 10 acres of land surrounded by 12-foot electrified fence, 3 underground bunkers filled with enough food and medicine to last years, gun safes in every room, solar panels, well water, and a small garden. I even have chickens and goats for fresh eggs and milk. I was proud of my work, too proud it started with the chickens. I woke up one morning to find 3 of them dead, their bodies torn apart. At first I thought it was a fox, or maybe a coyote, that somehow got through the fence. But the bites were all wrong, too big, too powerful, and the way they were arranged in a perfect circle. No normal animal does that. I called Sheriff Miller. He was a nice man who never made fun of my doomsday palace like others in town. He promised to check it out, maybe set some traps for whatever was killing my livestock. 3 days later, they found his patrol car on the forest road leading to my property. What was left of him was spread across 50 yards of dirt and pine needles. The official report called it a bear attack. I knew better. I set up trail cameras after that, motion activated, high definition. I placed them all around the property, hoping to catch whatever was out there. When I checked the footage, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. They weren't bears, they weren't wolves. They walked on 2 legs like men, but moved like animals, quick, powerful. Their faces, I can't even describe their faces. The Johnsons, who live about 5 miles east of me, stopped by one afternoon. They looked scared, their little girl clinging to her mother's leg. "We've seen them too," Mr. Johnson whispered, glancing over his shoulder at the tree line. "The wolfmen, walking upright through the trees, watching our house at night." I thought I was going crazy. It was almost a relief to know someone else had seen them. Then came the markings, deep claw marks on trees around my property, arranged in patterns too perfect to be random. Strange scents left in geometric shapes, circles inside triangles, stars with 5 perfect points. These weren't animals marking territory. This was communication. I watched them test my fence, methodically checking for weak spots. They used sticks to poke at the wiring, rocks to test the tension. When one approach didn't work, they tried another. These weren't mindless beasts. They were thinking, planning. The worst part was the howling. It started as normal wolf calls. But then, I heard names. My names. Margaret, carried on the wind. Then John. Then Sam and Emily. My dead families. Names, called out in the darkness by things that shouldn't know them. My solar panels were damaged one night. Not smashed or destroyed, but carefully dismantled. Wires cut in exactly the right places. Someone who knew electronics did this. When my monthly supply delivery arrived, I noticed the packages had been opened and resealed. Inside, the food smelled strange. I threw it all away. 2 weeks ago, I hiked over to check on the Johnsons. I hadn't heard from them in days. What I found, ... I still have nightmares. Their bodies were arranged in the living room, positioned like they were sitting down for dinner, but the way they were torn apart, and the symbols drawn in blood on the walls, ... No animal did this. That night, I used my thermal imaging equipment to scan the woods. They were out there, dozens of them, stationed in a perfect circle around my compound, watching, waiting, taking turns, military formation. I doubled the fence voltage, added more cameras, set up motion-sensing floodlights and alarms. I cleaned my guns and counted my bullets. I felt ready, protected, in control. I was wrong, so terribly wrong. It was a Tuesday when everything fell apart. I was checking the fence, like I do every morning, when I saw it. A hole not cut or broken, but like something had simply passed through the metal without disturbing it. The electricity was still flowing. The wires were intact, but somehow they had gotten in. At night, I watched the security cameras like a hawk. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I saw it happen. One of those ... things walked up to the fence. Its body seemed to shimmer, like heat rising off hot pavement. Then it just stepped through, solid metal passing through solid flesh like neither was really there. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst was what happened next. The creature dropped to all fours, its body twisting and changing. Fur receded, limbs straightened. In less than a minute, where the wolfman had stood, there was now just a man, normal, human. He could have passed me on the street, and I wouldn't have looked twice. The next morning, Mike from the supply store arrived with my monthly delivery. Mike, who'd been bringing me supplies for 3 years. Mike, who knew the code to my gate. Mike, who I'd shared coffee with dozens of times. As he handed me my packages, I noticed a small scar on his wrist I'd never seen before. And his eyes, they weren't right, too yellow. "Everything okay, Margaret?" he asked, and I swear I heard a growl underneath his words. I took the supplies, thanked him, and locked myself in the bunker as soon as he left. I cut open every package. Inside one of the water jugs, I found clumps of dark hair. They were getting smarter, using tactics I recognized from my military. Dazed distractions on one side of the compound, while they probed defenses on the other. Somehow, they knew when I was sleeping and when I was awake. They knew where my blind spots were. My radio used to pick up stations from the nearby town. Now, no matter what frequency I tune to, I only hear howling, sometimes whispers, sometimes my name. The worst are the visions. I'll be checking supplies or cleaning my rifle, and suddenly John will be standing there, or Sam, or Emily, looking, just like they did before the accident, but with those wrong yellow eyes. "Come outside, Mom," Sam's voice called last night. "We miss you." My gun safe was open this morning. I always triple-check the locks. 3 rifles were moved from there, places just slightly, just enough for me to notice. Yesterday, I set up my motion detectors in a new pattern. Today, they were rearranged, put back exactly how I had them before, like my new pattern was already known to them. Time feels strange now. I'll sit down to check my ammunition at noon, and suddenly it's dark outside. I find dirt under my fingernails but don't remember going outside. My boots are muddy. There are scratches on my arms I can't explain. I've started to understand how they operate. There's a clear leader bigger than the others, more human in his movements. The others follow his howls immediately, like soldiers responding to commands. Their social structure is complex, not just a pack, but almost like a military unit. Last night, I felt brave enough to check the underground storage room, the one furthest from the main house. The door was still sealed, just as I'd left it, but inside, all my preserved food had been moved. Arranged in that same circle pattern I found with the chickens. I had locked this place tight. It should have been impossible. I don't trust anything anymore. Not my eyes, not my ears, not my memories. Am I losing my mind, or are they somehow getting inside my head? 3 days ago, one of them bit me as I was closing the gate. Just a quick snap at my ankle. The wound isn't healing right. It feels hot and strange. Sometimes it throbs in time with the howls. From the forest, I try to call for help sometimes. The radio crackles to life. I start to speak. And then, "We're waiting for you, Margaret," says a voice that's not quite human, not quite wolf. And then silence. Just the sound of breathing. Mine, ... and something else's. Something inside the house with me. The bite on my ankle has turned a strange color now. Not infected, but different. The skin around it feels tight, and dark hair has started growing there. I'm afraid to look at it for too long. Last night, the leader of the pack finally showed himself. Not outside the fence or on a security camera, but sitting at my kitchen table when I came upstairs for coffee. He looked almost human. Almost. His eyes gave him away. Umbrella with pupils that weren't quite round. When he smiled, his teeth were too sharp. "You fought well, Margaret," he said, his voice rough like he wasn't used to speaking. "Better than most." I reached for the gun I keep hidden under the counter, but he just laughed. "We've been watching you for a long time," he continued. "Years before you even bought this land. We chose you, Margaret. We chose this place." "What are you?" I whispered. We were like you once, human, afraid, alone. He tilted his head, studying me. The oldest of us was transformed in 1943, some more recently. Your neighbor Johnson, he joined us just 3 weeks ago. My blood ran cold, and his family. The creature shrugged. Some join, some feed those who join. I backed away, but he didn't move to follow me. He didn't need to. I could feel them now, all around the house, inside and out, watching, waiting. Your family didn't die in that accident. Margaret, he said quietly. My heart stopped. You're lying. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and silver. John's wedding ring. The one they never found in the wreckage. The pack needed new blood, strong blood, military training, medical knowledge. We arranged everything. The ice on the road, the broken guardrail. No, I whispered. But deep down, I knew he was telling the truth. They're with us now. Margaret, part of the pack. They've been watching over you, waiting for you to build this place for us. And then, I understood. The compound wasn't my fortress against the world. It was their trap for me. Every fence, every camera, every security measure, all of it designed not to keep them out, but to keep me in, to isolate me, to prepare me. We think together now, he explained, tapping his temple. Feel together, hunt together. When one of us sees something, we all see it. When one knows something, we all know it. The bite on my ankle throbbed, and suddenly I could feel ... more. Smells I'd never noticed before. Sounds from miles away, and thoughts, whispers of thoughts that weren't mine. It's already beginning, he said, noticing my reaction. The change, your body is fighting it, but soon, I realized with horror that my thoughts weren't entirely my own anymore. Images flashed in my mind, running through forests on all fours, the taste of fresh meat, the joy of the hunt. These weren't my memories, they were theirs, and somehow, they were becoming mine. You have a choice, Margaret, the leader said, standing up. You can fight until we tear you apart, or you can join your family, become one of us, live forever, as part of something stronger than humanity will ever be. I felt a hunger growing inside me, not just for food, but for the chase, for the kill. Part of me was disgusted, but another part wanted it. That night, they came in force, dozens of them, moving as one, overwhelming every defense I had built. Alarms blaring, lights flashing, but it didn't slow them. Down they moved like shadows through walls, disabled systems with ease, cornered me in my own bunker. And then I saw them, John, Sam, and Emily, their faces still recognizable despite the changes, their eyes the same yellow as the leaders. They didn't speak, but I could feel them in my mind, calling me to join them. The wound on my ankle split open. Pain shot through my body like fire. I fell to my knees as my bones began to shift beneath my skin. I had a choice to make, die as a human or live as something else, something more. I looked at my family, the family I thought I'd lost. They were monsters now. Yes, but they were together, and they had come back for me. Yes, I whispered, reaching out my hand. I choose, yes. The transformation was agony and ecstasy. My body broke and remade itself. My mind expanded, suddenly connected to dozens of others, the pack consciousness flowing into mine like water filling an empty vessel. I could feel the forest, the animals, the night itself, in a way humans never could. When it was over, I stood on 4 legs for the first time, my senses sharper than I could have imagined. The pack surrounded me, my family nuzzling close, welcoming me home. The compound still stands, but now it serves a new purpose. A base for the pack, a place to plan our hunts, a trap for others who will join us or feed us. Next week, a family is moving into the Johnson place. They have children, strong ones. The pack is hungry for new blood, and I am no longer Margaret Donovan, paranoid survivalist, waiting for the end of the world. I am hunger. I am the night. I am the howl that makes you check your locks twice, and I am coming.